the question is, have these massive cultural shifts, especially in popular culture, music, art movements, whatever, have they sort of appeared to dissipate because our attention's divided across so many different areas, because the internet lets us access everything, everywhere, all at once.
Yeah.
You literally can, when I was a kid, we either had to listen to the radio with the tape in the cassette player and record the song so we could listen to it when we wanted to, because we didn't, as a kid, you couldn't easily just like take your money to the store and go buy this stuff. I mean, you could, but you had to have your parents take you. It wasn't just down the street for me. You had to 10 miles into town. Or we would watch MTV and you had to wait until it came on.
Yeah.
You had to wait for the video to show up. And then when it did, you watched it. And
you're pumped.
You're just
it means everything because that's all you got.
You have a VHS ready so you could record
if you got to go to the bathroom,
you
better hit it during commercial quick.
And now it's on demand. You can, and again, do
you think
does that mean that for some reason the shifts are smaller because they're in all these subcultures and subsets of music and art and all that stuff.
And are they maybe they're happening in all these like micro fractures, but then over time that builds up and everything just opens up at once. Maybe that's, you talk about these like changing, like you said, everything looks like 2009. I would argue everything digital, at least, looked a lot shittier in 2009.
Sure.
People just didn't have a comprehension of making things or doing things with, So we've learned. It's taken us 15 years to learn.
Yeah.
And now the fluency is higher.
Right. Well,
so is there about to be a spree of interesting stuff that comes out of that? Because the fluency is so much higher and suddenly you can work at the speed of thought. You're not working at fluency. I'm not going to argue though that like there's consumer culture and things like that have had an influence. Algorithm driven content optimization and things like that have had an influence. Like, I think that's a given. And do you have all like everybody's in their own little bubble taking in their influence, but maybe because everybody's in their bubble, it just takes time for these things to start to, like, you had 5 sources and the whole world was watching those 5 sources.
Yeah.
And then that melded together into something new so much better because you almost had like less experimenting that could happen.
Right.
So it was just like, okay, what's next? And that comes together. All the clay from all these like broken pieces comes together to form this new thing. And now, you have all of these little bits and pieces. And maybe a couple of globs over here come together and a couple over here. And it's just slower to build.
And then another aspect of that, I think, is because of the access to it all the time and the information that's out there, analyzing and breaking down the different artistic forms. I think about when I was in the thick of screenwriting, there's a book called Save the Cat by Blake Snyder. And it was great because he looked at all these movies from the past, especially more quote unquote commercial movies. And he was able to sort of find these common ingredients, these common elements, a formula, if you will. This happens generally around the 8-minute mark, and generally this happens around the 25 to 30-minute mark, and breaking down these things that were
page 18,
that were sort of predictable, and some of these movies were really very successful, critically received movies, and maybe the author wasn't super conscious of hitting all these perfect story beats, but that book, caught a lot of attention in the screenwriting world. And I think a lot of screenwriters started writing to that formula. And so it could contribute to the sameness of everything because we're all in on the formula because of the access to that information. And
you also have the introduction of capital to so many fields.
Sure.
There's always been capital. Like there's always been
but
God, it's crazy to think like the Beatles were as, I hate to just stay on that, but I mean, like some of that later stuff was just not, I guess even that though, to an extent, like you could, but it's chicken and egg, but like you had the flower power movement and like the hippie movement and things like that. But yeah, some of that stuff was just crazy to think that they still had the level of success that they had. Cause I mean, today it's like the point I was making off of Save the Cat is all we talked about this, you know, in the last episode, like all studios want to do is it's finance. It's how can I model this?
Yeah, it's as little risk as possible.
Yeah. Okay. You see that number in cell, 476. This needs to be lower than this number here.
Right. But even with us as people trying to make work, us shooting street photography or landscapes or whatever we're shooting, us writing a screenplay, us making a YouTube video, how much does our ability to so easily consume it all, especially its structures and its look, its tone, its vibe, the things we're seeing over and over, and that to permeate our subconscious, but then also the people that have actually like broken down stuff that was successful or stuff that was impactful or stuff that really moved people, to analyze what all of its ingredients and elements are, especially against other things like it, to sort of come up with this formula. And again, not that we're all consciously applying a formula to our work, but even on a subconscious level, are we more creating derivative works or imitating other people?
It had been a golden afternoon, and I remember having the familiar conviction that life was beginning over again with the summer.